Well, my agent put me up for 3 episodes of Doctor Who, and I'd never done any TV before, and I was in a musical, and I went down to London very fed up about having to pay the train fare because it was a lot of money, and I saw the director, and in those days you had to do a whole speech, so I did a speech from a play, a wonderful play called Daisy Pulls It Off, because I knew that I was going up for a part of a 16-year-old, and I was actually 24 at the time. So I thought, well, I'll do a piece that's kind of a young person's role. And then I didn't hear anything. And then I heard I got a recall, and I thought, okay. And I had to pay another train fare to go all the way down to London. I met the producer for about 10 minutes or so. And then a couple of weeks later, I found out that I'd got the role, but not only these 3 episodes of Doctor Who, but they were thinking of using me for a new companion in Doctor Who. And I never had a screen test, I'd never been in a TV studio, so it really was the most extraordinary thing. It was the easiest decision I've ever had to make, I think. In fact, it wasn't even a decision. What happened was my agent called me and said, oh, Andy Pryor from the casting department in Doctor Who has been in touch to ask for your availability. And we all know what that means, she said. And I finished the phone call and I burst into tears because I think it was one of those moments that I hadn't even known that I'd been hoping for. And I think it was one of those things where I'd always dreamed of coming back into Doctor Who. And when it was actually a possibility, it was a very emotional moment. I had a Zoom call with Chris Chibnall, and he asked me what I thought Ace would be up to, what she'd be doing nowadays. And I said, well, I'd love her to be like, we know that she's working for this company called A Charitable Earth, that she's set up, this charity, because that's what Russell T Davies had mentioned in the Sarah Jane Adventures. And so I said, I think she would be like she was in the Blu-ray. There was a wonderful trailer that was written by Pete McTighe, who wrote Kablam and several other episodes of Doctor Who. And he'd written this wonderful script and a beautiful trailer about Ace now. And there she is, she's the CEO of A Charitable Earth. She's standing looking out of this window, a sort of penthouse place, office suite, overlooking the Tower of London. And I thought, well, let's just continue from there, really. And I used that image as well for the book that I wrote with Mike Tucker and Steve Cole called At Childhood's End. And so we discussed, we said, well, the companions would possibly have found each other. There'd be this sort of little network of people because once you've travelled with the Doctor, how can you ever lead a normal life? And so we discussed that, and we discussed how, yes, Tegan was doing good works as well, so they'd probably have come across each other somehow and got together, and they'd be looking at these sort of strange situations that were going on. So for Ace, she'd noticed that these paintings had gone missing. For Tegan, that she was these volcanic eruptions and things like that. So, I mean, we didn't discuss the details like that, but we discussed the possibility that they knew each other by that time. The costume designer Ray Holman rang me up and said, well, what do you think Ace should be wearing? And I said, well, I'd like to continue from the idea from the trailer for the box set for the Blu-rays, so that she's the CEO of A Charitable Earth, that she wears business suits, but with a twist. I said I'd really like to wear Doc Marten boots, because I like them as well. Sophie Aldred likes them. But I think Ace would be wearing kind of just something slightly quirky as well. And then when I went down for the costume fitting, I took my jacket with me, the original jacket, and he said, oh, can we copy it? And I said, why copy it? Let's use the real thing. So that was that original jacket that I used as well on Power of the Doctor. And then he also had thought, well, why doesn't she, he said, would you like to have some badges on your lapel? I thought, yes, that's a great idea, that she would have a few badges just as a kind of nod to the past. And the badges that he'd found for me were amazing because they were the musical notes and the trumpet, and I wore he didn't know this even, I'd worn a t-shirt rather like that back in the old days, so it was all perfect. It was possibly one of the biggest secrets I've ever had to keep, and I knew that I wanted to keep it a secret because I think it's a bit like a magic trick. You know that thing where you always kind of want to know how a magic trick is done, and you ask, you think, oh, you know, I want to know, and then you find out and you think, oh, is that it? So I think it was the same. I realised that for the fans, it would be wonderful if they just knew nothing at all. And so that's what we did. We kept this secret. My husband knew, because obviously he kind of had to know why I kept going off to Cardiff. And then my two sons, who are kind of grown up, they kind of guessed, I think. I didn't tell them. And I said, well, do you want to know where I'm going? No, 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 no. They didn't want to know anything about it. So that was rather nice. And the only other person who knew was my agent. So yeah, I kept that secret. But I'm quite good at keeping secrets anyway. People tell me a lot of things over the years, especially at conventions, and I like to hold on to them. I think if people have told you things in confidence, it's only right to keep that confidence with them. So when it actually came out, when the trailer happened, it was just such a wonderful surprise for people, and I'm really glad about that. I was staying with my father and my stepmother at the time, with my family, and it came out on Easter Sunday, and immediately my Twitter feed exploded. It was just, I had to turn the sound off because it was going ping, 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 ping. And my stepmom and my father, who don't really know about Twitter or social media, they couldn't believe that this was going on, and Facebook and everything was just, it pretty much blew up. And for hours afterwards, I kept getting tweets and retweets, and people were saying, oh, I screamed, or I jumped off the sofa, or I'm crying, or it was just such a wonderful reaction. It was great. And my stepmom said, do you have to reply to everybody? I said, no, 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 it's okay. And I did do as many likes and things as I possibly could. But what was amazing was that the next day we woke up, and I think it was number 3 on the BBC News website was Janet Fielding and Sophie Aldred are back in Doctor Who, and that was an incredible feeling. It wasn't challenging to become Ace again, I think, really because I've never stopped being Ace. As you know, I've done all these audio adventures, Big Finish over the years, so it's actually very easy to slip back into the character of Ace. It's funny because I think some people think that Ace is me as Ace, and I'm not really like Ace, but I enjoy playing her so much because she's not like me. Although I'm sure that we've melded at some points over the years, but so I never find it hard. I think I always go from the script, and people write so well for Ace. Chris knew exactly how to write Ace. All the Big Finish writers are so good at writing for her that it's actually quite easy to bring that character to life from the script. We had to hide. So Janet and I were covered in these long dry robes. They're kind of what surfers or swimmers wear. So they were head to foot coats. And then we had masks, because we were filming at the time of COVID. So we had our masks on. We had hats, because, you know, I don't know, Janet looked like a little character from South Park, because she was wearing dark glasses as well. And they, every time we got out of a car to go to the location, they had golf umbrellas which they held over us. So I think it kind of makes people look more, but they couldn't see who we were. So we were very proud of the fact that we did keep it a complete surprise. And I was very proud of the fact that some fans have come up to me afterwards and they've said, "Oh, we found out that you were filming, but we didn't tell anyone." And I'm really pleased that they didn't, because I think it would have spoiled it for that moment where the trailer happened and everything was revealed. I think for me it's always learning the lines now, with this brain that's getting a bit older. Back in the day, I used to be able to remember lines like that, and I knew everybody else's lines, and I did a lot of presenting on TV as well, and I look back at some of those and I think, how did I learn these pages and pages of monologue straight to camera, you know? I'm not sure whether I could do that now. So I had to kind of click back into remembering the lines. Everything else was pretty much as it has been. The size of the equipment has got a lot smaller, but really the way that the crew works, the way that the cast and crew works together is still very similar on the Doctor Who set. Everybody knows each other very well. It's a great atmosphere. It was wonderful. Chris was very gracious in that I would text him and say, "Oh, I think this might sound good, or could I possibly put this bit in?" There was a part where I was standing on the top of this building, just about to parachute down the side of the building, and I thought what would be good would be to have a reference to the past. So I think I asked him if I could add the line, I think it was something like, "You used to be good at this," because I wanted to show that Ace has changed a bit. You know, I think as you get older anyway, you do get a bit more nervous about things, or you like jumping off the edge of the building, if you've ever had to do that. But yeah, it was just a kind of, he definitely was very open to the fact that that if we wanted to change anything, we could. I was filming the first day in a museum in Bristol, where the art gallery is, and I was a little nervous because, of course, there's nobody there who I knew. In the old days, we used to have rehearsals, and so you were never just, nowadays you just go straight onto a film set without any rehearsals, and you rehearse. The first thing you do is you do a read-through, and then you do a run-through for the cameras to show where you're going to stand, and then you start taking. So it's all very, very quick. So this was very different in that I was walking straight on. I didn't know anyone. I hadn't even met the director. We'd had a phone call, and everybody was in masks as well, so you couldn't see anybody's faces. So yes, it was a little bit daunting, but very quickly I was made to be at home because the first assistant director said, "I'd just like to say welcome back, Sophie Aldred," and everybody burst into applause, and then gradually people came up to me during the day and said, "Oh, I love Ace. I used to really enjoy watching Ace," even the young people. So that was, I felt at home pretty much straight away. We were filming inside a building, for our location filming, most of it. So that was actually very similar, because you usually only have 1 or 2 cameras. The building, in fact, that we were filming in, it was more like, that was more like a studio really, because it was a room and you could lay tracks down and things like that. So it wasn't really that different to filming in a studio. The lighting had plenty of time and so on. So it was remarkably similar. I was more surprised at how similar it was than how different. There wasn't that much green screen, just as much as the old days. There was a funny part where Ace and Tegan get separated and a shutter comes down between it with the door, and the director said to me, well, we'll do most of that in post-production, but we do need to have something that goes over the door. So, again, just like the old days, it was one of the props people with a big bit of wood that they just sort of pushed over the side like this. And, you know, we did a first take and it didn't work, and then so it was just like the old days. And then the green screen stuff, I mean, it was when I was jumping off the building. Again, I wasn't jumping very far, I was jumping onto some crash mats. So it was very, very similar to how it was in the old days. There was a very fun bit where Jamie came up to me one morning, the director, and he said, you know the bit where you come crashing into the TARDIS on the parachute? He said, I've been thinking about how to film that. Would you mind if we lay you down on a plank of wood which is strapped to a dolly, which is something that they push the cameras along usually, and then we just push you into the TARDIS? He said, would you be okay with that? I said, yeah, that would be great. So later on that day, there I was. I think the crew thought I was completely mad. I was lying there on my back like this with the strings from the parachute attached to me and people following me so they could hold them tight. And they just pushed me into the TARDIS like this. And I had great fun. It was really good. The most difficult bit was I had to get off like this, take the parachute off, get my baseball bat out, and you know, and say my lines as well. So that was quite tricky, but I like doing that sort of thing. It's a challenge and it's fun. There were many references to the past, which was great because I think that's what the fans like to see. And also I was very keen on doing things how I knew that the fans would like them. So for example, when I beat the Dalek up with the baseball bat, I said to the director, I think I should do very similar choreography to how I did before. And he said, yeah, that's a really good idea. So, you know, I sort of whack and whack, and I kind of knew where to do that. So that was fun. Yes, the only difference really there was that the top of the eye stalk and the top of the head was remote control, which was actually harder than in the old days because you had to wait for the remote control to come round, whereas in the old days the operator would just do what you required. But so I had to kind of work with the guy who was operating the remote control to make sure that he knew where I was going to hit the eye stalk. And they said to me, you've got to hit the eye itself because that's the bit that is going to shatter. So we did a few takes of that. And one of the guys, John Davey, who was there on that day, he came over to me and he said, why don't you pick up some of the bits of the eye stalk so that you can have them for conventions and things? So in between takes, he and I were going on the ground like this and subtly picking up these bits of eye stalk and putting them in our pockets because we knew that the fans would really like those. The first time that we did the scene where I reunite with the Doctor was in the caves. Now, Sylvester wasn't there, but it was actually really good because he's meant to be on a hologram anyway, And it was a very small space, so there was only enough room to squeeze in with me and the camera and the cameraman. And then I had Barnaby Edwards, who is inside the Daleks. I asked specially if he could read in Sylvester's lines for me. And it was very atmospheric because there were just a couple of us there, because we were up some rocks away from the rest of the crew. And it was just very intimate, and the camera was about this far from my face. And I could just imagine very easily, so that was great. And then they asked if I wouldn't mind coming back and reading in with Sylvester and giving him the right eye line and everything. So it was wonderful then, because of course I was just standing there opposite Sylvester, dressed in his costume. And he said afterwards, he said, oh, it was so weird, because it was as though the years just fell away and there we were. So that was wonderful. And then after I'd done that, they said, right, Sophie, you can go now. And I went back to my trailer, and then they said, I saw Colin Baker and I saw David Bradley, and they were just getting into those amazing robes, the Time Lord robes. And I thought, oh, I don't want to go home now. So I asked if I could stay. And then Jamie, the director, said to me, would you mind reading in Doctor lines if you're going to stay? I said, no! So I played all the Doctors after that, and I read in all the lines and gave them eye lines and everything. So that was like being at the best Doctor Who convention ever. It wasn't the same baseball bat, because of course my baseball bat I broke when I in the Remembrance of the Daleks, so they had to get me a new one. But it was the same design. It was the same. Obviously, the Doctor has somehow magically fixed it somehow. I was really looking forward to the companion scene, because I knew that my friends would be coming down to do it. So the night before, Bonnie arrived, and we met up in the bar and had some herbal tea together, and that was really lovely, catching up with her. And then the following day, we were all sitting around in the trailers waiting to be taken to the location. So there was Gemma and Janet and Katie Manning and Bonnie and me. We all sat around chatting for a while. And then we were driven to the location. And it was a strange day, because they put a lot of dry ice in the room. So it was a bit like being in a dream all day. Jodie came to see us because she wanted to see everybody and meet up obviously with John Bishop and Bradley Walsh again. So that was fun to have her on set. And it was lovely having William Russell there, of course. And he was a little bit confused, but everybody was so kind to him, especially John Bishop, who helped him with his lines, and the director came and just knelt in front of him. It's very moving to see that, actually, how well they treated him, and how moving that was to have him there. It was the most brilliant day, yes. The empty chair was there, really, I think, so that you could imagine who you wanted to be in that chair. I think originally in the script there was meant to be a tablet or a laptop there, and they were going to put several companions there on like a Zoom call or something like that. But I think it's rather lovely that it could be for Sarah Jane Smith, it could be Liz Sladen, obviously, it could be for Caroline John, it could be for Mary Tam, it could be for Jackie Lane, it could be for any of those companions who've gone before. And I think it's whoever you want to be sitting in that chair. I think the master here is just so brilliantly written and obviously acted by Sacha Dhawan. It was wonderful watching him as an actor. Janet and I were standing up those stairs looking down on him, and we both looked at each other when he'd rehearsed a couple of times, because he gave the director a different take every time. He gets something slightly different, not different for the cameras, but just different, a different flavour, a different way of saying the lines. so that the director could choose. And here the master is, he actually seems to succeed. And I just think it's wonderful that the companions and that everyone has to get together to save the Doctor. And you sort of realise this time with the master that, oh, the master's not actually as strong as they look, that actually there's something that they just don't get about the Doctor, which is that humanity, in a way, that the Doctor has learned from being around humans so much. It's the kind of, it's the love and respect for the human race that the Doctor has, that the master will never have. And I really like the way that that's shown up in this episode. When I did the trailer for the Blu-ray, it was the first time I'd really been Ace in vision for a long, long time. And it felt wonderful to come back and portray her as an older woman. It was funny because it's something I kind of thought I'd never do, maybe. And it was so wonderful to have this opportunity. And also, I knew what joy it was going to give the fans to see Ace in a surprise that it would be for them. And I think it was just so perfectly written. I loved the voiceover. I actually recorded the voiceover on a completely separate day, and I did that first. So that was nice because I could reference that in my mind when I was gazing out of the window and basically thinking all the thoughts that I had about the Doctor from the past. One of the wonderful things about working on Doctor Who is how well everybody gets on with each other, and what a joy it is to see people years later. And yeah, that's just no exception with The Power of the Doctor. Even I bump into Gemma Redgrave, for example, doing voiceovers and things like that, and it's always lovely to see her, because Gemma and Janet and I had quite a lot of time together at the side of the set, or where they were setting up the show. So we'd have hours to talk to each other, and we really got on very well. And there are all sorts of funny things that happen as well, but it's like telling a joke after it's happened, in a way. It wouldn't be funny if it wasn't. I can't actually remember anything that happened, but I just have this general flavour of working with these wonderful people and having an amazing time with them. And it's just so wonderful that we have conventions to come to so that we can reminisce together and so that we can be together. I wouldn't have met Janet Fielding had it not been for Doctor Who conventions. And then maybe we wouldn't have been in The Power of the Doctor together, who knows? I think the format of Doctor Who is very special. There's nothing like it on TV. Somewhere where you can go anywhere in space or time. You can have the main character played by any actor, regardless of gender, race, creed, colour. You can have a companion similarly. And I think there's something that just appeals to all of us in the character of the Doctor. Slightly mysterious, very eccentric. If you look at all the people who've played the Doctor over the years, they're all incredible people in their own right. Eccentric or brilliant, clever, funny people. And I think that's the enduring quality, really, for people. This superhero who uses their brain rather than their strength or something that's added onto them. And this kind of mysterious character who's in love with humankind.